I'll give you a fight!
The answer to the question in the title is complicated. There are a few categories to break down to look at for that answer. There are 3 parts to a beam attack in the series. First, how it's charged, then followed up by the attack itself as it flies across the screen. Finally, the effect you get when it hits the target. In order to fully answer the question of why Sparking Zero fell short, we need to examine each part. So with that in mind, let's get started. In some ways, the charging effect on attacks are the most important, while in others, it's the least. So let's start with the first part and why it's important. The main reason here is simply enough, actually. The only real personality and uniqueness of attacks is how they are charged. Would a Gallic Gun and a Kamehameha be different if they were charged the same way? Yes, they're different colors, but that would be the only thing. Joking aside, this flavor is important for moves, even if I do tend to gloss over them often. At their best, an incredible charge animation can build up the anticipation for an attack and make the payoff even better. And to show off how hype-inducing some of these charging animations can be, and how a lack of one can start an attack off on the wrong foot, let's look at how Sparking Zero does this incredibly well, and how, yes, BT3 falls short. And honestly, yeah, Sparking Zero wins here pretty easily. When it comes to the animation for charging attacks, Sparking Zero is the winner, with BT3 being at the bottom. So this does give Sparking Zero a good starting point. There's plenty of character and effects on these attacks to make them nice to watch. You can really get a character giving their all in some of these. I mean, look at this!
Break through the limit!
There's one big problem here though, that being the rest of the attack has to live up to the charging animation. This is where Sparking Zero has the biggest issue. If the attack that comes out after a very impressive charge up is just a beam without anything extra on it, or the standard impact effect is bland, you get this dread feeling of being let down. The king of this is Blue Goku. His charge up is incredibly long and extensive, but then the actual attack is stock. And this is the key to what I said at the start of the section here. While the big impressive charging animation for the beam is indeed important, it can backfire if the attack is boring. We'll cover the exact way how Sparking Zero falls short here later, but let's look back to those attacks from BT3 again. They really don't have much in the way of charge up, yet they do have some things going for them after the fact that lets them still have an impact. This brings us to the next part of an attack, the actual blast itself. These attacks need to actually look good. For your non-beam key attacks, Sparking Zero does pretty good here. For beams though, it's got some issues. Let's look at BT3's beams real quick. For the most part, they're pretty basic, just a glowing color. A really long lightsaber, more or less. There are some that have additional effects, but not too many. While not exciting, this is the base that all attacks should use, and there should only be the base. This is a bit too basic for attacks now. Even the anime agrees with that. There does need to be a bit more to them. Raging Blast was mostly the same as BT3 when it came to attacks, but they had the stronger ones with a bit more to them, mainly the shape being wavy at times. Then we come to Sparking Zero. They have an additional effect on the beam, but it doesn't work. You can certainly have an effect on the beam that could enhance it, but there is one very important thing Sparking Zero's effects make that makes it not work. It doesn't make it look like a wave. All the effects from the anime or other games that work make the beams look like it's pushing it forward. It can work from time to time, but the thing is, on the attacks it does work on, they tend to be bigger and move faster. The way it works now, it almost makes the beam seem like it's moving slower with a little bit more color inside of it. As I said though, it does work on some attacks, so it's very much worth taking the time to look at those examples. First up, let's bring back that blue Goku. Not for the attack before it hits, no. We want to look at this incredibly small window of this beam. While only like 26 frames long, so less than half a second, it shows us the base beam from BT3. This tiny little beam here really does show us that you can have a more dynamic beams that still look like beams. A big part of the reason why it fails to have much of an impact is it goes away too fast. And that's what we will explore in this final part of an attack. What happens when it hits? This is where BT3 shines the most over both Raging Blast and Sparking Zero. Well, sorta. It's mixed, but more on that later. For right now, it's better. How is it? The beam just gets to exist on screen longer. In fact, I felt like timing how long. Once the beam actually hits the target, it stays on screen for about a second. In comparison to Raging Blast, it's more like 0.15 seconds. Sparking Zero is a bit more complicated in that regard. While it technically about as long as BT3, it doesn't have a real impact or effect until the ending explosion, which really makes it feel more like Raging Blast 0.15 seconds. I think this is the key reason why people still look back on BT3's attacks. It takes the time to put the impact on each hit of the beam rather than just one big explosion. Having a nice crunchy sound on every hit also makes it feel powerful. Which brings us to the effects when someone is getting hit. And this is where BT3 starts to come up short. Like, look at this. It's just a tiny little red cloud. It's on every hit, sure, but it's not the greatest. On bigger attacks, there are bigger and flashier effects, but those are basically flashbangs for how much they make the screen flash white. It just hasn't aged that well. So with that in mind, we're going to mostly be comparing Sparking Zero to Raging Blast this time. And Raging Blast actually has some pretty good effects on hit. You get bigger and bigger explosions and shockwaves as you do stronger attacks. You even have the smoke and sometimes little lightning effects linger well after the attack is finished. It helps to make the attack feel like it did something powerful without potentially blinding you. Looking at Sparking Zero's effects, we have something that actually isn't that bad, if you slow it down. Once again, things move too fast in Sparking Zero. Look at the explosion in slow motion and you can break down that it does have little shockwaves that come out along with the explosion. They're just too small and fast, so you don't notice them really. The main thing you notice is the smoke cloud is made of, which did not need to be color-coded like that. Just make it a normal looking explosion and the effect actually doesn't look bad. Pick a yellow beam and then look at the blast. Red ones also look good. Green ones also look pretty good. Look like some radioactive nightmare blast. Thinking about it, the biggest problem color is probably blue, which is the worst color to look bad. After looking at it for a while, I think the main problem here is the color of the clouds left behind are too dark. I'm not an artist, so this is getting way outside my small amounts of knowledge, but for whatever reasons, the blue explosions lack something. Maybe they just lose color too fast? Regardless, they could learn a few things from Raging Blast here. Different colors or not, having some more effects on the stronger attacks and having the smoke linger around longer would probably help. You could even have it where the smoke could clear in a dramatic way if the person that just got hit started to power up or dashed away or something. This has all mainly been focusing on supers, so let's shift the focus a bit to ultimates. Sadly, BT3 will need to sit out again as there isn't much of a change between supers and ultimates in that game. It will get some time here though. Sparking Zero and Raging Blast are very similar in having cutscenes for ultimates hitting them. I'm a big fan of this as it helps to separate ultimates and supers from each other while giving other beams some cutscenes like the far more dynamic rush attacks. The issue with Sparking Zero is their scenes are very similar to one another, which makes them all feel the same. Now, I don't expect them to make unique scenes for each ultimate, but variety would help make them feel different. Not every beam needs to consume the target. Look at Goten here. Having the beam just carry them away and explode is a fun finisher for a beam that doesn't just consume the whole body. A good portion of moves are going to be basic things that are just going to be fine at the end of the day, but having like 3 to 5 different effects would help spread that out and allow for more uniqueness without needing to do it for every attack. The last thing about ultimates in Sparking Zero is they seem like they were designed with the thought that you would get into a lot of beam struggles with them. As they are solo, it's a bit weird with how some of them work. You have this elaborate charge up animation and then fire off a beam. Then suddenly, you just power up for an even bigger beam. The reason this is so weird is because they don't show you hitting anything, so it just feels like the character powers up for no reason. Now if you do a beam struggle first, this makes the ultimate actually flow well, so depending on how often you do beam struggles will determine how well these moves work. I think they should work in any scenario, not just a very specific one, which is why so many of them fall flat outside of the struggles. They're lacking the logic of what's going on. Let's look at the best example of this, the Super Spirit Bomb.
I hope you'll come back someday. See you later. What's the matter? Come get me. You're really tough. See ya. Send me your energy. It's ready. You are incredible. Let's rematch someday. See you around.
As you can see, both BT3 and Raging Blast have a scene of the Spirit Bomb being grabbed by the target, stopping it from hitting. Aside from being a recreation of the anime, it also gives an internal logic to the game as to why Goku powers up. He needs that extra strength to do the final push for the attack to actually land. It works the same way with the Father-Son Kamehameha. Of course, it doesn't flow as well coming out of a struggle this way, but I figure a game made in 2024 could have different versions of the finisher based on if it was from a struggle or not. Super Broly's ultimate can change based off of if you're near a wall or not, so I don't see this as too crazy of an expectation. Now everything said up till now was mostly focusing on non-rush ultimates or supers. The main reason being, rushes are unique to themselves. As they are just cutscenes, there is a lot of control of how they play out and everything over beams. The main thing I want to focus on here though is the sound. Most rushes are actually fairly good, but they all share a fatal flaw with the sound effects. They simply aren't crunchy enough to really sell how strong these attacks are. Let's take this rush from early Goku.
Body, don't fail me now.
Visually, it's pretty good. The problem is the sound effects. While they're fine in theory, this is Dragon Ball. The amount of strength and force characters have in this series is incredibly high. The sound effect needs to match this. Let's take that same rush, but just swap the sound effect from Raging Blast in.
Body, don't fail me now.
Now, that's what I'm talking about. This sells a strong hit far better. It almost feels like an explosion. The game does a great job at showing why good audio design is important on a game. The sound on punches in particular across the whole game just don't have the impact you'd expect. They technically aren't bad, but they don't have the weight you want. Aside from the sound, there's one other big issue here. A good number of rushes are too fast. In almost every possible way, they could be as well. This isn't true for every rush, but it is generally. The first of such issues is the hits don't get the time they need to feel impactful. If you have a character like Birder, then yes, it makes sense to have the hits be snappy and quick. However, when you have someone like Ultimate Gohan, his hits need to be stronger and feel as if everyone could be a knockout. Sadly, his ultimate moves feels as if they have no weight behind them because of how fast they move. Contrast that with Burst Rush from Raging Blast 2. You can feel the weight behind these hits because you get small pauses between them. There are attacks in Sparking Zero that do this, but not nearly often enough. The other issue is just attacks ending too soon. Let's look at Kale here. It's one of the better rushes in the game, but it really needed a third slam. 2 semi-quick slams and then the blast. They needed to do more like what they did with Broly here. There are good attacks here, they just needed a little bit more on top to make them excellent. The last thing I want to talk about is accuracy to the show in attacks. How much a move follows the anime. This isn't technically about Sparking Zero's moves, but when else am I going to have time to talk about this? To me, this isn't that important. The most important thing to the attack is being cool. Now obviously, these are not mutually exclusive. Recreating some of the best moments of the series will very much lead to good attacks. What I think is a mistake is to use accuracy as a reason for why an attack is bad, or why a character can't have a good attack. Let's look at my favorite example of this in Golden Frieza. Best ultimate in the base game, and it's 95% original. It's not that having attacks be accurate is bad, it's just accuracy should help make the attack good, not have something be accurate just for the sake of it. There's no real rule here on what to do either. I'll say if you want an attack to be accurate to the show, it still needs to be cool looking attack. If a character doesn't have anything else to prove from, just make something up. The other issue here is sticking too closely to accuracy and downplaying something that could be unique or iconic to that character. For example, let's look at Broly. He has a unique key charging animation. It's something that not only separates him from other characters, but also from the other Broly. The kicker here though is, yeah, in the movie he doesn't just charge up like this, so giving him the generic golden aura of a Super Saiyan is the much more accurate thing to do. I believe this is a mistake though. It would be far better if he had his unique animation all the time. It's far more visually striking and just more cool than what doing it accurately gives you. So, like the title says, Sparking Zero does have underwhelming moves, but they also do take some steps forward. There are good effects, but many attacks lack something that makes them stick out or fall flat elsewhere. If I were to break down the 3 stages of beams, then Sparking Zero has the best charging, BT3 has the best beams, and Raging Blast 2 has the best impact effects. So the best thing to do would have the charging stay mostly the same, but have the beams have some time to stay on screen with better effects, and then a big explosion that gets to linger around to finish it up. The theme on all 3 of these is to slow things down. Each of the steps uses the slowest version of each one. In the end though, I wouldn't call Sparking Zero moves bad. It's more going from a PS2 or PS3 to a PS5, and after more than a decade, I was looking to be blown away, and I just wasn't. But the elements do so are there. I have confidence that given another shot, a Sparking Zero 2 would have everything needed to blow us away.